Hello, YouTube. I know these videos look like they could be made with AI, but I just wanted to let you know that they are not. I do all the editing for these myself, and this is the sound of my actual voice. That said, this is the start of a new series I hope to start getting out on a monthly basis, and that's about it for the intro. Let's talk movies. Finally, I get a chance to talk about Stephen King's Carrie. Because every time I've gone to talk about this movie, it was right before Tubi was removing it, and it's coming back this month. It's about a girl who lives a very sheltered life because of her abusive religious mother, that gets bullied in her high school, and through all that pain and trauma, she ends up developing telekinesis, the ability to move things with her mind. This was my favorite Stephen King adaptation for the longest time because I feel like it just works when adapting a horror novel into film, and it didn't make me feel like it would be a better read in the end. Though there is barely any gore, and there are definitely moments where you're like, how is this even a horror movie? But it makes up for that by being a roller coaster ride of emotions in the end. It wasn't until The Long Walk from last year came out that I knocked Carrie out of my #1 spot, though I'm still trying to figure out if that's a recency bias on my part or because of how dialogue heavy it is. The Carrie remake from 2013 is also coming to Tubi this month, and is worth a watch if you're not in the mood for something from the 70s. But the original is definitely the best and an absolute classic. It can be a bit of a slow burn at times, so just make sure you see it through to the end, especially if it's your first watch. It's rare that I talk about religious horror movies on this channel, especially when talking about Tubi, but when I do, I tend to really like the ones that I talk about. Pray for the Devil. It's a 2022 religious horror movie about a female exorcist who typically aren't allowed to do exorcisms by the Catholic Church. I tend to enjoy exorcism movies more when they try something different than the usual formula we've seen done many times before, and this one definitely does that for me. It's not based on a true story, so it has the creative freedom needed to give you everything that you want from an exorcism movie without having to worry too much about staying true to the source material like some exorcist movies do. Though it is heavily inspired by real exorcism practices, keeping it grounded in an authentic religious horror feel. It does have a fair bit of visual storytelling to it, so try not to get too distracted while watching this one. There are a few jump scares, it barely has any gore, and it also has some pregnancy horror moments in it if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. But it tells a really good story, which is where this movie shines. I'm also going to give an honorable mention to Godless, which is another Exorcist movie on Tubi that I've talked about on this channel before, that also does things differently. It's just not new to Tubi this month and is only available in the States at this time, but it is available to watch for free on Plex in Canada as well. Truth or Dare. Yes, this is a Blumhouse horror movie, but it's from back in 2017 when Blumhouse had a better reputation than it does today. It's a survival horror movie similar to things like Countdown, Until Dawn, or The Monkey, which are not the greatest movies to compare it to, but I enjoyed Truth or Dare more than all of those. It follows a group of college kids on spring break that end up in an abandoned building where they decide to play a game of Truth or Dare. That turns out to be a supernatural version of the game where once you play, you must play or you die. It doesn't stay at the abandoned building the whole time, as the curse follows them around after they leave, which keeps the game moving into the real world. Some of the characters are unlikable, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in a movie where people are getting picked off one by one. The creepy imagery wasn't that scary, and the distorted smiling faces came across kind of comical at times, which reminded me a lot of the Smile movies in that way. That being said, there's still a few suspenseful moments in it, and I enjoyed that it had a bit of comedic relief along the way. This isn't the best thing Blumhouse has ever made, but it's far from the worst either. If you don't take it too seriously, it can actually be a lot of fun. The Invisible Man. This is a 2020 science fiction psychological thriller that reimagines the classic Universal monster movie of the same name. It is a bit long at around 2 hours and it starts off kind of slow, but once it gets going, it builds its suspense through the fear of the unknown and the fact that you can't actually see the villain. The story follows a woman who inherits a fortune from her abusive ex, a narcissistic sociopath who turns out to be a genius in optics, and figures out how to make himself invisible through high-tech engineering. The movie plays out like a psychological slasher in the stalker sense, except you can't see the killer, and instead of constantly attacking her, he spends more time messing with her mind. Because of that, this movie ends up having some deep commentary about recovering from narcissistic abuse, physical abuse, and extremely controlling relationships. There are a few shots of just empty space where you don't really know where your eyes are supposed to be looking, which is clearly intentional, but can feel a little strange at times. There are some self-harm moments in it and a lot of narcissistic abuse themes if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, but there isn't much gore. So it ends up feeling more like a psychological thriller than a straight horror movie, but it's still worth checking out if you're a horror fan. Up next, we have the office space of horror movies, also known as the Belko Experiment. This is another older Blumhouse movie from back in 2016, when Blumhouse was putting out better movies than they have been lately. It's about a group of American office workers working in Mexico who get locked inside their building and are told they have to start killing each other. This movie is not a slow burn at all. It takes about 15 minutes to get into the action, and then it just escalates from there. The gore is surprisingly decent, and the movie has some solid social commentary on things like power dynamics, authoritarian control, and corporate dehumanization. The acting is good. There are a few recognizable actors in it, and overall it's just a really fun, chaotic watch. If you like fast-paced survival horror with a bit of meaning behind it, this one is definitely worth checking out. Also, I'm going to give an honorable mention to Snowpiercer, which isn't a horror movie, but it is a cult classic, post-apocalyptic, dystopian science fiction thriller. And if you like post-apocalyptic movies and have not seen Snowpiercer yet, then it's a must-watch. It's about the last of humanity trying to survive together on a never-ending train after the snow consumes the rest of the planet. And Terminator 1. Yes, Terminator 2 might be one of the greatest sequels ever made, but the first one hits completely different because it's directed more like a slasher, which gives it this tense, almost horror-like vibe to it. There is gore, but not how you'd expect from a horror movie. It is very retro with its classic 80s CGI and musical synthwave score. And I'm just going to be real here. I was one of those people who went years only ever watching Terminator 2 and completely skipped the original. So if that's you too, this is your sign because it's coming to Tubi this month. But that's going to be it from me. Once again, this is the start of a new series that I hope to get out every month going forward. And I have another series in the works that involves more physical media and me talking more critically about films more often. So if that's something that interests you, I don't upload that often if you want to hit that notification bell. And if you're into B-movies, cult classics, hidden gems, and horror, or just in the mood for something different than what the mainstream media has to offer you, like and subscribe. And I will see you again in the next video. Thanks for watching.